Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining and welcome to our webinar on Microsoft Teams collaboration. I'm going to start off by going through some features of Microsoft Teams, sort of a brief overview, and this will then be followed by Josh Brazier, one of our account managers, going through SharePoint, and Mark going through PowerBi. So I'll start off by going through who we are and what we do. We're a IT services and support company based in Kent, covering London, South East and further. We were established in 1984, so that makes us about 34 years old now. We have 70 staff, 3/4 of whom are technical and service delivery teams. We are also a Microsoft Gold partner, and our competencies not only involve exams, but actually deploying the technologies. So we're really living and breathing this stuff. We are also a highly rated partner with many other industry leading vendors, and we are ISO 9001, 14001 and 27001 accredited. We're also Cyber Essentials Plus accredited as well, which is becoming quite a government standard at the moment. So we'll begin with a brief overview of what I'll be discussing today, and I really want to drill down into the collaboration and working from home side of Teams, given the current situation. So with that said, what is Microsoft Teams? Microsoft Teams is a chat-centered collaboration powerhouse. It allows for calling, conferencing, and meetings. You can work with your team, whether they're internal to your organization or external. And with Teams, you'll have the access to the integration of content, applications, Office 365 and third party, and persistent chat. So that means all of your conversations in one place and nothing gets missed. In short, Microsoft Teams is your single pane of glass. Let's now talk about the chat and team chat features. So this is Teams. This is usually the landing page when you open the application. So as you can see, it's a clean and simple interface. You have your tabs on the far left, and I'm currently in the chat section. In this screenshot, I'm in a group chat with 3 other colleagues. And again, this really shows the collaboration opportunity you're getting with this. You may have also noticed a message in bold. This means it's unread. Now, if we move into the Teams section on the far left, we can see the teams I've been added into. Currently, I'm in my demo team and in the general section. In the chat section is where I view the team chat, which I've set up with a RSS feed of BBC News at the moment. And you can also share files in the files section. You can also integrate Office 365 and third-party apps into the team by selecting the plus button. And at the moment, we're using a team to communicate with engineers responsible for us working from home. So this is really useful if we have any queries or questions, or I need to make an announcement for support. One more thing to note is this external text at the end. It says Microsoft 2020 events planning, and then you've got brackets EXT. That just tells us that there may be external members of that team within that channel. So that's really useful to know if you're sharing confidential documents or documents that are only used internally, so you know exactly which chats have external and internal members. Now let's jump into the calls section. So we have our dialer that can be made available if needed for voice over internet phone calls. And this is done by implementing a Microsoft Teams calling plan. You can also speed dial numbers if you wish by clicking this button at the top. And if we jump into our contacts section, we can view all of our contacts in one place. You can add a contact by clicking the Add Contact button. And I'm sure you can already see how simple the Teams interface is. If we now click into the history page, we can see over a month of call history in one scrolling page. Contacts and internal calls will show up clearly. And if you want to check your voicemail, simply click on the voicemail button on the left. Here we can check and listen to voicemails, again, with existing contacts and internal users showing up clearly, so you can differentiate between known and unknown calls. Now, not only do you have all your voicemails here, but you'll also get an email notification with an automated transcript to read if you don't have time to listen. And finally, if we click Files on the far left, we can view and open all of our recent shared files. So, now for the big question, how do you access all of this? Well, you can access your single pane of glass anywhere, and you have full support across platforms and devices. Teams is currently available on Windows, Android, and iOS, so you don't have a lack of options here. Most importantly, with Teams and the whole Office 365 suite, you can ensure you're secure when using it. And I know there'll be a touch on that later in Josh's presentation. And on this note, I would also like to give you a brief overview of the admin side of Teams. Now, I won't dive too much into the technical side of things, as we do have a variety of viewers watching today, but admins will know how this can support them with their daily duties. So if I now jump into the demo admin center for Teams, you can see that you've got a user search up in the top. You've also got user activity and organization information. You also have some training sections, so admin training for Teams, instructor-led training, and user training. This all can be really useful, but we can actually dive into this a little bit deeper now. So if I jump into Teams, I can manage my individual teams here. And this is where all of the teams within the app will show up. Not just the teams, but we can also jump into them and go into the channels in those teams. We can look at the members. And we can also change the settings for each individual team as well. If you have any policies in your organization that you'd like to implement into Microsoft Teams, you can do that by jumping into the Teams policies. We can take a look at the global one, and we can look at the policies here. In devices, you'll find IP phones linked to Microsoft Teams, and you can set them up through here as well. You also have locations for network topology and emergency addresses and bits and pieces like that. Here in the user section, you can view each individual user internally. So for example, I click on Alex Wilbur here. You can see he's a marketing assistant from the UK. Here's his business phone number and his email address. You can also see his 7-day activity here, which can be really useful. See how many calls he's made, for example, or how many meetings he's been in. You can see his audio conferencing settings, so you can reset PIN numbers and change his conference IDs. You can also jump into his outbound calling settings and his call history. So this can be useful if you're wanting to track calls within your organization. As this is just a demo, there won't be any call history here, but you can view the whole list just like you would individually. And you also have his individual policies. So which policies do you want to assign to him? You also have your meeting settings on the left here. So you can set up the conference bridges or meetings policies or live events policies. We're running this off of a live event right now. Here in your messaging policies, you'll have access to everything you need to set up for the organization internally. So you can change the chat settings. Do you want to enable that? Do you want to disable that? Or do you want to have just individual teams? The fun bits like the GIFs and the memes and the stickers, you can change all of that individually. So if your organization, like a lot of them, would be quite strict and you don't want to allow the GIFs at all, then you could have strict settings or you could turn off GIFs entirely. If you're quite a relaxed organization, you could have no restriction at all. And this all goes for the same with memes and stickers. If you're running organization and you've got a organizations in different locations, then you can stick the translate messages button on and translate them into the languages that people need. You have loads and loads of settings in this message policy, and I'm sure you can find many uses for all of them. We can now jump into the Teams apps where we can manage all of the individual apps that users can install. For example, if I don't want them to be able to use ADP Virtual Assistant, we can just simply click block. And that will stop them from downloading that or having access to it at all. And if we decide actually that is a quite useful app for our organization, then we can just click allow. We can also upload new apps through here as well. that users will be able to integrate into their team's environment. We also have permission policies and setup policies. Again, I don't want to dive too deep into the technical side of things. In Voice, we have some dial plans and direct routing settings, and also auto attendance, caller policies, bits and pieces like that. Again, with the policy packages, you have all your policies in one place here, especially for education. This can be quite important. And the analytics and reports section, you can view all of the usage for users. This demo section doesn't work with the analytics settings, so I do apologize that I can't show you that one. But you can run a report on the users and find out all of the statistics that you need to. You also have your org-wide settings, so you can set up guest access and decide which guests can actually join into Teams. So if you can just click allow guest access, you'll then be able to individually set the settings for those people as well. Will they be able to share their screen? Will they be able to make private calls? Will they be able to delete messages, etc.? You have your team settings here, organization-wide as well. So you can set up notifications, taggings, email integration, files, and you can see everything in here yourself as well. Holiday settings, Teams upgrades, everything you need in this one portal here. You also have your Skype for Business Legacy portal. And on that section, I would like to quickly run through an announcement on that. As I'm sure you've heard, Skype for Business online end date was announced at the end of July 2019, and it will be properly ending July 2021. Skype for Business on premises is continuing, and Server 2019 suite has been announced this year. But it is time to begin planning now for this, so that you have a smooth transition into Microsoft Teams. Finally, let's talk about some exciting new features coming soon to Microsoft Teams. So we have custom background being combined with the current background blur feature. Now, news on this one, it did roll out to our tenant a couple of days ago, and here's some fun pictures of us exploring the new feature in our daily briefing. So as you can see, there's a lot of fun to be had, but you can also have custom backgrounds that can put you in an office environment or in a classroom, so you can totally eliminate your current background and appear in multiple different locations. So continuing on, we also have hand raising that allows people to raise their hands in meetings to notify others in the meeting that they would like to speak. And this means no more interruptions anymore. We can all probably think of a time when we were in a conference call and everyone's talking over each other. This should eliminate that. There will also be even more messaging extensions coming to Teams, such as forms and polls in the chat and Teams chats. And finally, quite a big one at the moment and quite a talked about one is multi-window chat as well, for ease of access to different people, teams and channels. And also, more importantly, I know they're bringing out multiple people on the screen at once. They're looking at upgrading to 9 people on the screen at once instead of the current 4, which will be very useful for people transitioning over from a software like Zoom, for example. So there's a lot of features crammed into this one short session that I do understand, and I didn't want to rush over anything there. But for anyone curious to learn more, we do have our team's knowledge shares available. And if you want to find out more about these, please don't hesitate to contact us. They can be very useful, especially at this time of remote working. And finally, thank you to everyone who tuned in today, wherever you're working from at the moment. If you do need anything from us, feel free to reach out to us on the number on the screen or shoot me over an email and I'll get back to you as soon as I'm able to. But that's it from me. Thank you once again. Stay safe and goodbye. I'll now hand over to Josh, who'll be running through some exciting features in a SharePoint environment with a live demo as well. So Josh, I'll now hand over to you. I'll let you bring up your screen here.
Perfect, thank you. I was just going to quickly share my screen with you guys. There you go, Isaac. Is that
Fantastic.
okay?
That's it. Brilliant. Lovely. Thank you, Josh.
No worries. Thanks, Isaac. Yeah, so guys, I'm just going to be giving you a high-level overview of SharePoint. This is going to be a mix of a few slides at the beginning, just a few pointers I want to mention when you look to move to SharePoint and how you use SharePoint and a few use cases. And then also I'll go into a live demo of where we'll be split between what it looks like from a file management out of the box, and then also going into a bit of custom development, and in this case, an actual intranet that we've made. So just a little bit first on who I am. So my name is Joshua Brazy. I'm part of the sales account management team here at ADM. I've been in IT for just under 3 years, and in customer service for around about 6 years. I'm actually a Chelsea fan, not a Real Madrid fan, and I thought it'd be quite relevant to put my photo in there with a KFC behind me on custom backgrounds, as per Isaac's announcement just then. The Q&A is open throughout this slide. So if there is any questions, feel free to chuck them in there. If they're technical, we'll try and answer them. If not, I've got 8 SharePoint engineers who will be able to answer that for me, perhaps either during this or after. But I will answer those questions at the end of my part before I hand over to Mark. So what we'll be covering, as mentioned, obviously we'll be going through some important points, and then some live Q&A questions and some demos and whatnot. So some important factors to consider. Now this is from experience of when we've been moving customers to SharePoint. And obviously what obstacles we have come across. And the first point we always say is internet connection. You're going to be relying a lot on the internet connection because your files will be moved to the cloud, and the stuff that you'll be using will be cloud-based. Although you can bring files offline, you will be relying on the internet. So we do say you do need to have a good internet performance and also a very reliable internet source there. So otherwise it will just not be an enjoyable experience on SharePoint for you. So that's one of the most important parts that we say is internet connection, having it reliable, whether you be at home or in a cafe or whatnot. Your internet connection is a strong player in that. Second of all is end user training. Now Microsoft have brought out a fantastic sort of training program. It's called the Champions Training program. Now basically what that means is when you have obviously to push the training out in an organization after investing into SharePoint, it's basically to find your champions. Now that may be heads of departments, it may be people that are interested in the project. And we'll say you may want to include them in the original scoping of SharePoint so they can find those value points and share that with their colleagues. Now, finding those value points generally means that they will find use in SharePoint and they'll use it effectively rather than being forced to use something like SharePoint. And you can often find those in the scoping and sort of exploring part of when you look to move to SharePoint. Thirdly, it is the type of files. So SharePoint is not a place for large movie files or big raw photos or games as such. If you want to look at large movie files, and places like Microsoft Stream may be better for you. Photos, Adobe generally is the place there. It just will not be enjoyable putting these sort of large photo files and large video files in there. And I'll come on to the sort of file sizes and whatnot on the next slide. But yeah, that's the 3 main bits that we found when moving people to SharePoint that have been the obstacles that we've had to overcome when plainly just migrating the files across as a basic file management platform. So use cases, before I go into the use cases, I'll just kind of explain how SharePoint is out of the box. SharePoint out of the box is just this file management platform where you're given a sort of storage limit and you can use it as a company-wide collaborative space to share your files. Now it's general business work files like your Word, your Excel and so on in there. And I'll come on to that in the live demo, but out of the box is a file management area platform. So you can just put your files in there and share and save as you would across a company rather than having it as a personal space like OneDrive. So some of the use cases we've had is we've had a few clients where they have retired software, and by retired software, it's software which no longer has any support across it. So they're running the risk of perhaps security or just functionality issues when it's glitching and so on. So we look at places like SharePoint to be able to put that in there for custom development. And basically when we do this, we look at obviously the things that work in that bit of software, and we look to see what can be moved across to SharePoint. SharePoint does require a lot of customization, and with customization, it takes obviously time. However, the main focus that we put in at the beginning is the scoping, and we have some great documents and sort of spreadsheets and whatnot to be able to analyze that and put that into picture to keep track as well when we move through it. And then the guys in SharePoint are great for obviously keeping you up to date and showing you live as to what it would look before it's even made, because the design part of it is a little bit quicker than the actual customization part. The second one there is consolidating software. Now, if you've got, particularly in HR, one bit of software that books annual leave, another one that books perhaps schedules of engineers, and another one that does expenses. Being able to take all three of them, especially if you're paying licensing fees for them, and put that into one area in SharePoint as a central hub, particularly for HR, it's great because obviously it points everyone in the right direction rather than having 3 or 4 bits of software installed on everyone's computers. That's a particularly key part that we found with customers coming to us for SharePoint, is making it easier and having this one central hub, and particularly in HR. And I'll show you some of those features in the live demo as well. Another one is a central hub, and I think I just alluded to that. It's having a central space, whether it be for social messages, events, updates, and so on. And again, I'll show you that as part of our intranet there. And then the fourth way is just cloud storage and collaboration, which again we've alluded to as a basic file management platform. Some people just prefer to leave it like that and then eventually expand on it to move it to like an intranet or so on, or in some words a mini CRM. So just before I go into live demo, I've got 2 slides here. One is on the file sizes and limits. So in your SharePoint platform, as for most plans, you'll have a terabyte of company-wide storage. That's across the company. It's not individual, it's company-wide storage, and then 10 gigabytes per license user. Now, also key to note there, OneDrive, which is the personal storage, will give you 1 terabyte per user for personal stuff, which you can generally take off of the laptop or off the PC to give it some more resources. Now, SharePoint will give a terabyte of company-wide storage, so that's great for things like policies, perhaps customers, bits of data there and whatnot, depending on what you're putting up there. And also, yeah, like us, we're ISO 9001, 14001, and 27001. So all of our policies and that sort of thing we house in SharePoint, and it's great because you've got things like version history to track back on, which I'll show you later on. It's important to note that the file size limit of moving data into SharePoint is 15 gigabytes. Now that's forever expanding. I know that things like places like Google do have higher, and I think with you probably seen in the news, Microsoft are just chucking more and more resources into their infrastructure to keep up with the demand, and that 15 gigabytes change constantly to get to that point, and it's going to carry on moving that way. If you're moving from internal SharePoint site to site, 100 gigabytes to move across. So that's from an internal SharePoint site to another internal SharePoint site. Now, it's becoming more and more relevant in a time like this with SharePoint, is having your data readily available and secure at any one time without having to have physical hardware in the office, or having to VPN or having to RDS in and see obviously through that way. Having it in SharePoint, it's secure and ready available wherever you are, whether you're working from home or in the office or from a CAF. It uses the same security, but it's across 365, and the 365 security metric that we use is Secure Score. A Secure Score, I'm not going to go too into because it's not necessarily a technical demo that I'm going to be doing today, but it's more, if we can go into, I think we've got quite a few videos on our YouTube which you can refer to around security, but 365 Secure Score is a brilliant metric because it will often just show you what you can do to be able to get to that higher level of security without having to purchase additional plans. A lot of it is just turning on. And a lot of these are fairly comfortable for the end user. Now, don't get me wrong, if you want to go for the full 800 out of 800, you may find a few complaints from end users with making it a bit difficult to log on. However, finding that medium, like using things like MFA to comfortably control and lock down SharePoint and your data is certainly recommended. And the same elements apply to SharePoint as what you would get in the grander schemes of 365. On the right hand side here of the display, you'll see a lot of the applications which work with SharePoint, and we've particularly done quite a lot with Teams, with building SharePoint sites within Teams and having it in one area. So you've only got Teams and perhaps your Outlook open, and that's all you need, because everything else just opens inside that ecosystem. So it's important to note there's quite a few, and I think Isaac showed you a lot of the applications, and you can show how you can block some of them as well. So yeah, you can have it as a mini CRM as such, and have the two working together as we often do now. On the left hand side, you'll see the data center locations for this part of Europe. NHS, MOD, and so on use these locations. They use Microsoft Azure infrastructure to store this, where obviously the back end of SharePoint is being stored to. If one of them goes down in the UK, it'll move to another one. I think there's 3 now in the UK, so there's a lot of resilience there to be able to do that. So I'm now going to just move to the live demo. Just bear with me. So you should be able to see the SharePoint page now for Forest Lake, which is a demo page that we have created based on some work we did for a school. So we've taken all of the data out and we've put in there a demo page to show you guys. So the first place I'm going to start is going to be in teacher resources. So this is what the file management out of the box would look like. Obviously there's a little bit of branding in there, however the navigation bars is what I want to focus on, and the folder structure. So it's very similar to the familiar Windows file explorers in the folder structure, and then you jump in and you've got another folder, and you eventually will get to a document if there's a document there. Now what I will focus on quickly is the navigation bar here and the 3 dots, both doing similar things. So by clicking on here, we can then, if I wanted to, part of that collaboration scheme, just share with another member of staff. And I'm going to use the word tenant. Obviously, you would become a tenant of using the landlord Microsoft's infrastructure. So in your tenancy, you'd have all of your users. Now in there, you can just type it in, it'll bring it up. Even external people as well, you can chuck it in there. By copying the link, you can work on a document at the same time, and you can see in front of you, you both working on there. So probably a different demo, or you can do as Outlook, and you can share the document, attach it as the document, and have 2 separate documents if needed. Like I said, it'll come through as an email. You can put a message on there and send it through. You've got your usual renames, download if you want to bring it offline. So you're going to work on a training and you'll bring it offline, you can do it that way. You can copy the link as I've just seen and share. You can do some alerts and a few other bits there, but a lot of the stuff is what we're used to in the usual Windows file explorers. We'll jump over to policies. So you've got 2 documents here. The documents bring up a few more options. So on this, we have the same as what we've had before. However, we have the version history. So version history is probably something you've seen around SharePoint. It's one of its greater features, especially out of the box. So we, as we alluded to, we do a lot of our ISOs in SharePoint. Now, it's particularly handy when also you have to go in to review your ISO, as it changes quite often, especially every year. You can track back a few years and say, right, I made this change to bring up to this legislation change or law or whatnot, and see who made that, and then you can put some comments in there as well. It's important to see without having to save multiple different files for 2015, 16, 17, 18, and so on. It's just all in there. You don't have to save multiple. It's all in that same bit of data behind that document. And you can just go back and click on that change, and it'll bring up that document from that time and refer back to it. And then you can reinstate it as a newer version if you want to. You may just want to go back and review it and then save it and say, checked, done, confirmed, approved at this time. And you can see on the side here the statuses, which can be added in there for pending, approved, and draft, and see who it's customized by. It's a really handy tool for most people. Obviously, you can just go back and have to save multiple documents that you've probably seen in your own, where you've got the same document, just listed version 1, 2, 3, or a date or so on. You can just have it in one document, and the metadata behind it will keep that information behind it. You can download it and so on at the top there as well. So we'll jump now into the sort of customized intranet that we've done. So I'll just remind you, this is the out-of-the-box file management area. And then we'll be now skipping into the custom area. So we'll be starting from the top down and show you what that looks like and what features we've got in there. I won't be going into every feature, but I just want to kind of show you what you can put in there. But be sure, chuck it in the Q&A if you want me to expand on anything. I'm more than happy to jump on a call after and just expand on that. So at the top here, the design is often done around the website that you have. It could be that we actually speak a lot to marketing managers or directors to be able to do that and keep within brand guidelines. And you can keep that changed as well. You can put it seasonal, you can put Halloween or summer or Christmas or whatnot in there. It's very much customizable, especially on design aspects. So we have notices, so maybe company news, maybe working from home news. It might be that you're going to be doing a quiz on a Friday night. There's plenty you can do there, and that can be fed into things like Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and so on, or BBC News, Sky News, and that sort of thing. The tools on here, some of them are made by Microsoft, so you can just add them yourself. Some of the stuff which I'll come on to, especially on the green tiles down there, is stuff that we've made. As we come down the green tiles, I'll come to this in a second, but we're a big fan of the green tiles, especially because it's very end user friendly. And you can get things like custom APIs in there. You've got ISAMs in there and SIMs, which you'll probably know if you're a school. And you can connect the two between each other and use them effectively. On the right hand side here, we have some countdowns on weather. The weather especially is something you can just add in yourself through Microsoft. Term ends, which is a calculator. Apparently it's getting cold. I think it's getting warmer actually, hopefully. Staff search. Now you can run this off of Delve, which is a back-end side to 365, is where it's a sort of a modern approach as to searching for a directory of people in your tenant. And that can show details of perhaps work schedules, emails, mobiles, names, line managers, and so on. It's very customizable. You can just search by a name and it will bring it up automatically. I don't think there's going to be anything on here. It's a demo, but no, yeah, you often search it and it'll come up for you underneath. We've got some upcoming events, particularly interesting around this time, whether it's be webinars, whether it be training. On the right hand side there, we've got some shortcuts to resources, whether it be training links or whether it be sort of third-party software or shortcuts that you use. And at the bottom here, if you have perhaps the departments, you can do individual site pages on SharePoint for departments. So you might have a HR, a sales, a marketing, a manufacturing. In our case, internally at ADM, we have 3 support teams downstairs. So they each have their own sort of pages to go by. And those support teams have different clients, so they have different information from each other. I'm going to finish off by looking at the tiles here and some of the features which we've created, and then I'll jump into the Q&A and answer any questions that may have popped up, and then pass it over to Mark to go through the Power Platform. The first one I'm going to go through is the calendar. You can see here, you've also got your green tiles. I hover over it, you've got sub-menus, as to most of them. Particularly handy. Otherwise, you can. There's a lot of customization. You can click through to it, and it'll give you another option. This is a very modern approach, I suppose. If we click on this one and we go into calendar, this may be for room bookings, it may be for engineers, it may be for cars. There's plenty it can be used for, and it gives you a great overview as to how busy they are. It may be that someone's requested to book off some annual leave, and they've booked off Christmas Eve for the last 3 years, and you think, right, it's probably time for someone else. It will show you that if you want it to. There's a lot of customization that can be done on the calendar, and you can see different views there as well. On new starter, so this is something that comes up quite a lot to us. With new starters, it can often be very complicated and painful, especially by letting so many people know if there's a new starter joining, from IT teams to payroll to HR to their line manager to other members of staff. So with this, it makes it really simple. You've got the either option of leaving, temporary or permanent. In this case, we'll choose permanent. And on there, it comes up with different information selection boxes. So this will then alert through to the necessary people. With the top names there, it might go through to payroll to let them know that they've got a new member of staff they need to pay and their job title, which may determine how much you get paid. And then you've got start date and line manager. That might go through to a line manager and say, look, John's starting on this date. Can you make sure you're ready to be able to give him half your day to introduce him to what he's supposed to be doing? Laptop, that'll go through to the IT team to make sure that they've got a laptop with the required software subject to the job title role and to be set up for that date. And this will just send off flows to the required people, generally through an email or through Teams, to let them know that there's a new task for them and let them know of your intentions that you put through SharePoint. So that can be customized. You can add more there depending on your business and what you need. Another one here is forms. Now, forms can either be forms in the Microsoft app. You can chuck that in there and create a new form, or it can just be a shortcut back to where we were before in going through to just a file platform. It's important to note that you can just do that from the top as well for your sub menus. So it's very similar to just being a website, and you've got all of them up here, whether you want to go to our values and have it as another sort of sub site to read from, or whether you want it to go through to your file management software there. Now, covered a few of them there. The MIS, that's sort of APIs into SIMS and ISAMs and so on. And timetables there will then bring you through to an Outlook calendar. It can just bring you through to a calendar like we saw in the resource bookings. So there's a lot of customization that can be done in SharePoint. A lot of people like to keep it fairly regimented at the beginning and drip sort of stuff through as they find new features because they find it fairly easy to train their members of staff through the champions program like that rather than chucking everything in there. So we often phase these approaches because customization obviously does require a bit of work and it also requires people to obviously attach to that and find their values and use it. So we have a great program at ADM to getting people to use that and controlling that rollout as well. Christian, is there any questions on the Q&A, or am I ready to pass over to Mark to go through the Power Platform?
Hi Josh, from what I can see there is no current questions.
No worries.
Yeah, no current questions at the moment.
That's fine. So if you do think of anything, chuck it in there or find me on LinkedIn. It's on the Josh Brazier at ADM Computing, or speak to Christian or Isaac to get my email address and send it through. More than happy to expand on any of this, answer any questions, particularly if they're technical. More than happy to dive into that away from an audience. So yeah, apart from that, I'll pass over to Mark to go through the Power Platform. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thanks very much there, Josh. Hopefully you can all hear me okay. I'm just going to bring in PowerBi for our reporting needs. So I am a third line engineer with ADM. I've been with ADM for just over 5 years now, and I do quite a lot of sort of SQL reports and sort of configuration. With PowerBi, it is very powerful and very user friendly. It does integrate with the Microsoft ecosystem very well. I just thought I'd sort of give you a quick run through as to what you can actually achieve with it. So there is the user interface and the layout, and it does change quite a bit. So some of the images that I've got have been superseded with different names, such as edit queries is now transform data. But Microsoft just keep adding new stuff to it all the time. Why you would use a 365 account, the licensing, use the utilization on a mobile device, and also the web interface side of things. So the main things to consider is that PowerBi will look at the data that you give it, and it will help you create meaningful visuals. So the data sources can be various. They can be RESTful API streams, JSON queries, SQL databases, CSV files, Excel spreadsheets, etc., etc. There's loads. They don't all have to be on premise. They can be cloud hosted. And the main thing is PowerBi will not alter your data. It will merely look at what you've got and do what you ask it to do, but it's not going to change your data at all. Some of the things you can do if you were to have an Excel spreadsheet which you're getting from a cloud source, but you keep having to modify the data every time to hand over a report to a manager or someone, you can actually make all those changes once in Power BI, and then just tell it to refresh the data and it will display all the visuals you need. So changing someone's name, changing a particular word to be something else. There's various ways of sort of using and manipulating that data. With regards to the data, instead it's a case of just adding data in. In this instance, it would be a case of getting the data, choosing from the common steps. If I was just to choose CSV, I've already got some data loaded for this, but if I was just to choose another CSV, it's going to pop up and say, this is what I found, is this correct? I can just load the data straight in, or I can transform the data, as I've just said. You can manipulate it. So we could change all of the 4s to be red or the 3s to be blue or something like that, so that Power BI does that work for you. If I just load that one in, it's going to be doing that for me now. And it creates a relationship between Power BI and your data source. So it doesn't actually modify the data at all. And we can see on the field side, we've got the CSV that I've just imported and all of the available fields that were there, and the data set that's already in there, and all of the fields that are available for that one. You can see all of your data as well. So if you sort of get confused as to what you're looking at the time, so you can sort of manipulate through it all. If you're using SQL data, it won't query in this way because it's an SQL database backend, which is going to be changing all the time. So getting data is as easy as that. If it's a table that's in the cloud or in SharePoint or an SQL backend, it's just a case of pointing it to a cloud source, give it some credentials to authenticate to, and then you have that query there, and the data will remain. If I just create a new page and show you how easy it is for this data to create a visual, various different types of visuals. If I just go for this one here, so this is just going to create a bar graph for me, and then I'm going to want to add in salesperson in on there, and then for the value we're going to go for order ID, and then now we can see our salesperson and how many orders they've had. It will, by default, it will be doing a count, but if you were to change it to count distinct, so the way I kind of look at this is count distinct is how many orders, and then count would be how many times that salesperson appears on an order. So it can drastically sort of change the numbers. So from something that I've been doing recently, changing our reporting system, our dashboards for our ticketing information, it's a distinct count of ticket numbers rather than how many times an engineer may appear in a ticket or the ticket number may appear. And it's obviously changing the numbers here. So it's as easy as that to just create something on screen. If I go back to my visuals one here, the way I like to look at it is between static and interactive visuals. So with a static visual, once you've built everything onto your page, the static ones are going to be designed to display particular and current data. So something where someone is walking past a wallboard, or you are going to be presenting something in a meeting, and it just needs to be that sort of metric that you need there and then. A non-interactive report, so it's not going to change, it's just displaying the information, and those slices, which I will come on to shortly, it's just using filters so that you're actually honing in on that data. But you can also have its data whilst on the move, and that also appears on the interactive visuals, but that's more so for people that want to manipulate. So the interactive visuals would be you are showcasing some data, and then you want to change what one particular item may do. For example, you could change the visual to show you how much profit you could get if you was to increase a particular item by 2 pence per unit or something, and you can drastically change those bar graphs. on the fly. Querying data as well. There's quite a fairly new feature to the Power BI desktop for the Q&A, which is very powerful. I look forward to showing you that one at the end. And meeting and discussion points as well for interactive visuals. So if someone was to ask you a particular question, but what happens if we brought another salesperson in or another engineer or whatever, and you can just sort of change those numbers on the fly, see how all the data sort of levels out. So what you're seeing at the moment is how it would appear on a screen, on a web page, etc. But if you have a licensed account, you can also have a phone layout. And as long as the application works on your phone, any visuals that you've created, you can just quite simply drag on, resize. These aren't very good ones to choose, unfortunately, because there's nothing to actually do on here. But then you can just get your phone out, sign into the PowerBi app, and then you have access to all of your data. So something I recently created a contracts report for some of the sales guys. And then I sort of said to them, you can get it on your phone as well. So if you was to walk around Tesco's and bump into someone, you could, and they sort of not sure how their contract's doing, you could even get your phone out and you could answer that question there and then, because the office never sleeps. The data is everywhere. It's pretty much the way of the world now. So with regards to, actually, let me go back to the visuals. If I go onto here, so that was just one visual being the bar graph on there. But what you can just do, if I just do a simple copy paste and then decide that I want that to be a pie chart, simple as that. And then if I don't like those colors, I can go into the modification. You can enable data labels to show you the numbers. You can change the colors. You can change the colors per person. For example, as Josh mentioned earlier, that we in the service department work in separate teams. We have particular colors for our teams as well. So if I was to be presenting a report as to how much time we've logged for a particular day, it's quite good where there's so many of us that I split our colored labels into our team colors. And then you can also drill into the team as well, and you can see who is underperforming perhaps on the team. Let me just check from my notes, if I am skipping past anything. No, I seem to be good on that front. One of the really interesting things is the filtering and the slicing. So if I was to, again, make a copy of this one, and on this particular visual, if I wanted to look at a certain metric, so on here, for example, where I've got this particular bar graph selected at the moment, if I was to filter in on the salesperson, it's currently going to be looking at everyone. But if I was to choose just one particular person, then that metric is going to show me just the information for Janet, whereas everything else on the screen is going to be showing me all the other data. It could also change the colors if I wanted to. Change the default color here so it makes more stands out if Janet had a particular color as well. But something which is really powerful with Power BI is coming away from filters, because that's very static, is using slicers. So if I wanted to bring this data in here, just add a slicer on screen, tell it that I want it to be a salesperson, it's going to show me these particular salespeople. So before I use this, if I was to click on a certain salesperson, everything is highlighted that is relevant to that salesperson, and there's still a lot of white noise on there where it's all grayed out. But if I was to use a slicer and click on someone, everything I don't want to see is no longer there. So I can really, in a meeting, if someone said, "Oh, but how is Laura performing in this area?" then you can sort of click in and look at these numbers. If you wanted to look at particular people, you can control click and bring in many people, and it's going to be showing you all that information. And if I was to then go onto the rubber to resell that, I'm back to where I was. You can change from being lists to being drop downs if you're going to be cramming quite a lot on screen, because obviously real estate for your screen is quite important. But something we haven't seen at the moment is we're just seeing a list of order numbers, and we're seeing them for the salespeople. So if we bring in another slicer and we tell it that we want to do a country, we can now look at all the salespeople which are doing orders in Canada. And we can see here that Andrew is actually performing better than other people. If I wanted to bring in a couple of other countries as well, then we can see how well we're doing here. And if I was to reset that and then just change it to be a drop down. Now this is obviously demo data. It's quite old data in the sense of its sort of age. But if I do another slicer and I bring in the order date, so this is giving me a between. So from the 1st of January 2016 to the end of March. But if I only wanted to look for, say, just what happened in March, then that's showing me now all this data in March. So if I want to see how well Robert King was performing in March, then that's he had 6 sales. I don't want to keep this filtered one on screen now, just merely going to delete that. And then I am going to bring in a table, and I'm going to add in here the country, the order ID, product name, and the salesperson. I don't need this one to be so big. So then here I can actually see the countries and the product names which have been sold. 17 particular orders on this one. So it's showing me all the data that I want to see and is relevant. As I say, if I was to have this on a phone layout, I could do all of this on my mobile phone. And one of the being a techie, obviously we get excited about quite geeky things at times. One of the best things I think Microsoft ever did is when you have your phone in portrait mode, you get your phone layout. But if you just flip it to land screen, you will get this view on your phone. So that's when you actually see it happen, it's a really cool feature that occurs. Let me just check. So with regards to PowerBi itself, there are 2 engines. It's pretty much a really powerful version of Excel for what you're seeing at the moment. So there are formulas that you can create. If I show you on here a couple of simple examples, if you wanted to work out the difference, the date difference between how many days it took for an order to be ordered and then shipped, you can quite simply create a new column which isn't in your data. So you don't have to go to your actual source of data that might be an Excel or CSV file. And you can actually create that data in here in Power BI. So as long as every time that you refresh that data and you get a new data set, you will then just be able to press refresh and everything you want to see is already there. You don't need to go back and re-manipulate all that data. There's various formulas you can use if you're familiar with Excel. I'm not overly familiar with Excel and the formulas, but I know that they are pretty much the same with what I'm using in Power BI. But you can also transform your data, and it takes you into the DAX engine, which is quite similar. Typical. That's there we go. Yeah, that's a Bill Gates moment for me, where it's trying to find something which there isn't there. But in here, this is where you can add addition. You can add columns, for example. So if I was to say that I want to know what these numbers represent, but I don't want to take my actual source file that I'm getting from an internet page every week, and I don't want to download that file and then change it. I can create like a conditional column in here, and then I can give it a name, and I can give it just a basic logic. So if that column, stick with equals 4, output red. Add another one. If that column equals 3, output blue. And then if these aren't matched, display nothing, or you can just put NA, unknown, etc., and go OK. That's actually creating another column for me, which is to say, if I had thousands of lines of data that I'm getting every week or wherever it may be, this is just going to do this for me all the time. There's many other ways you can do lots of stuff in here. You can change the type of what the actual data is. So you're not changing it at the source, you're just changing what Power BI is seeing it as. For example, in SQL, when you get like a date field, it always has a timestamp on it as well. You can just cut that timestamp away just by coming in here and changing it to be just a date stamp. Close and apply, and then that's just going to update the information. And then in here now, I have my test column. Didn't exist in my data until I did it in Power BI. And that's an example of how I was going to use conditional columns on here for salespeople. Once you've created everything, you can then publish it. So when you publish, you sign into your 365 tenant through here. You can see up here, I'm currently signed in. And you publish it into a workspace. So anyone can use Power BI. All you need is a bit of imagination, project, and some data. Quite simply that. You can always access this through your own utilization of Power BI, or if you're in 365, you can publish this to your own workspace. It is free to do so. Now, the caveat comes in when you want to share. So if you are in a meeting and you are signed into your account on a screen, that works perfectly. But as soon as you want to share this report to your manager or someone to actually look at it beforehand, you're not going to give them your password to your 365 account or your computer. So you're going to need to share this report. It's very easy, sort of 3 clicks of the mouse, type in the person's name, job done. But that's when you need pro licensing. It's not overly expensive. That is something for the sales guys would need to consult with you. But as soon as you can actually utilize the pro licensing, you can share and collaborate, and you can see everything that's working. With regards to a workspace, you create your own workspace, sales, service, marketing, whatever it may be. You can grant overall access levels through information, your user accounts that are on premise, perhaps, and synced up to your 365 cloud, or users that are direct in your 365 cloud. May even have SharePoint groups that you've already got configured that you can target those. And then you can just grant read access, modify access, etc. But as long as those people have got the pro licensing, then they can see that data as well. You can share externally as well to people in other tenants. Obviously, you're sharing your data to other people. They won't see the actual data; they're only going to see your Power BI report. But it's a good way of collaborating. You can even embed these Power BI reports directly into Teams or embed them into SharePoint. So reports created in Power BI desktop require the software to view, such as Word or Excel. So publishing the report to 365 allows viewing that data via the web. Access to publish reports, so what you created, available online, and a pro license can be required, as just said. Dashboards is a collection of reports to form a scrollable web page. So for visibility and restrict access to the report source, but it can be shared to or removed to. My grammar is completely bad there. To all removing license hurdles. Basically, if it's a dashboard, you can pick up particular visuals from different reports you may have published and bring them all into one. So then you can just have a dashboard to show particular things. You don't have to have an entire report shared on one particular screen. And data that doesn't live update, such as a CSV or Excel on-premise file, this demo data, for example, you would need to update the data within Power BI and republish it every time. So live data such as SQL database or perhaps cloud storage is best. Now with that, the 365 tenant is still not going to see that data. So you can use a free product from Microsoft, which is their Power BI data gateway, and it sits in between your data source and your 365 tenant, and it merely gets the data and hands it over to the tenant. So if you was to go and have an SQL database on premise or even in SharePoint, wherever it may be, and you're querying how many tickets have been raised or closed, etc., it can be live as per the actual users pressing the refresh button on the web page. And you can also do scheduled refreshes on it as well, background refreshes, which can be sort of an hour. Yeah, sort of a minimum of an hour of background refresh. So something that's really good with having offline data, such as this CSV data set, is the Q&A side of things. It's just another visual. You can just pop it in, and you can ask it questions. And this works when you're in the web portal as well, once you've published it. So, for example, if I was to type in salesperson with most orders, actually with most order dates, salesperson with most order dates by ship date. That is then going to give me a metric, and I can see here that at this point there is Andrew Fuller is currently winning with that one. But I can ask my data these questions, especially while I'm in my cloud as well. If I ask it sales in Germany, it's pre-populating all of this information for me as well. So this is currently going to be showing me the information that is relevant to March on the order date. So if I was to remove my filter there, it's going to show me more information. It's going to show me much more information there as well. With regards to these filters on the dates as well, they can build up on a hierarchy so that you can actually tell it a year, a month, a quarter. But with this being old data, you can also make it relative, for example. So you can say, show me it in the last 4 years, the last week, the last month. So you can really sort of get all your data centralized in one place that you need it. And if I just change what I'm sharing with you, so hopefully you can see something that I have shared here. So this is our insights for our service dashboard. So this is a report that I've created. There's various pages down the bottom. I'm not going to go into those because they are all relevant to us. But this is stats for today. And if I was to refresh this data, it's now telling me that how many tickets we've had raised today, how many have been closed today, same day closes already, how many tickets have been closed within our 30 minutes. We luckily haven't had any tickets that have missed their response time, and 49 of these tickets have been self-healed by our remote managing and remote monitoring and management system. Josh said earlier on that we are split into particular teams. I should have really color-coded these because Jedi is green, Apache is brown, and Zulu is red. But these are team closures for today. Some of our Team Zulu chaps are on project work and also presenting as well, which is why our number is going to be a bit lower, just to support my own team there. And with regards to our tickets, with our SLA priorities, we actually have 4 SLA priorities, but we haven't had any tickets today that have been raised with a 15-minute urgent response time, which is why it doesn't show on screen. But that's just one way that we can have this. If you ever come into ADM premise and into our service area, you're going to see things like these on our screens, and they will roll around particular pages and they'll refresh themselves just so that there is information for all of our engineers. Our engineers will have access to this because I will quite merely just go to the share option and share data out to them, and we can build web pages, dashboards, etc. for this. We can even take this particular page that we're seeing here and embed it into our service teams channel. So whenever we all go to our service teams channel and click on our general to see if there's any updates or anyone's after any help, etc., we can all see how well we're doing, or if there's any other metrics we may want on here, such as tickets which are 5 minutes before they are going to be overrun on their response time, for example, which means that we can actually work better to making sure we don't miss those responses. I've also got a Sway presentation, which if you're not familiar with Sway, it is my preferred version of PowerPoint. It's part of the Microsoft 365 ecosystem as well, and it is creating presentations and all sorts of sort of nice graphics and everything that you can do with the data that you need. If you have any interest in Power BI and if you want more information, please do email your account manager, or if you don't have an account manager with us, I think Isaac or Josh will provide you with their email accounts. and then I can send you a link for this Sway presentation. I can share it out to you, and then you can read a bit more about Power BI. It is a bit of a sort of techie side of things, more than the sales or anything. But if you're likely to be wanting to create visuals and metrics and punchy KPIs and everything, it could be quite useful to you. Any questions? Feel free to email them over, and obviously I can answer them as best I can. But for now, I shall stop presenting, and I think I'm going to be handing you back to Isaac for the closure now. I think over to you, Isaac.
Hello there, everyone. Thanks, Mark, for that, and thanks, Josh, as well. Thank you, everyone, for watching and tuning in wherever you're working from at the moment. And again, if you do have any questions, then please don't hesitate to contact us on 01227 473 500. And yeah, thank you, everyone, and stay safe. Goodbye.